What's going on, guys? It's Dylan there. Today we will be going over technical analysis on the ticker symbol MSTR strategy. Strategy is at about a week of consolidation after a very nice run up, a pretty much linear price action, pretty much straight rise up for about 3 weeks, a very nice breakout from this nice bull flag. We will be jumping into the analysis on every single time frame, daily, weekly, and hourly, potentially grazing over Bitcoin that will have a correlation to do with the stock price of strategy. With that being said, let's get straight into the video. So there's a lot on the chart. We will clean this out in just a second here, spread it out, but we do see this uptrend, which is holding for strategy for about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, about 15, 20 days. We have seen that broke. In the last video, we did mention that was a possibility, as we have been riding on this for quite some time. But that doesn't mean automatically we have to come down and get crushed. We will go on this on a lot of different time frames, the psychology, patterns, technicals, all the analysis. So with that being said, let's go jump over to the weekly. On the weekly time frame of strategy, we're clearly still working with a weekly bull flag continuation pattern, which is something very key. We have to keep marking this up, guys, as we did get this very beautiful bull flag back around early 2024, pushing into almost early 2025, almost about a full year, 8, 9, 7 months, whatever. Formed out this very, very nice bull flag, which we did marked up right at this level. And since then, accordingly, we had a very nice breakout, essentially 4xing from the stock, right? Coming from these lows of around, I believe, $50, $60, something like that, grinding all the way up to 543 in quite a linear fashion, going straight up, zero pullbacks amongst the way. Since then, we have been forming another weekly bull flag continuation pattern, which we officially broke out and announced on the channel a couple weeks back. So we had a very nice, pretty easy layup of a breakout here, as we broke the top of this trend line with a lot of bullish signs. And since then, we've had 1, 2, 3, and 4 candles, 4 weeks of price action. So we are starting to see a little bit of a pullback nearing these highs. As you see this flagpole-like structure going all the way up, this very, very big flagpole. And then we have about 1, 2, 3, 4 wicks at the top. And this is a pretty key level around this general zone. We've been stretching down at this area around here. As you see, 1 wick here, a couple hanging out. So this general area is a block of resistance. We do have that marked up. And we have run into this spot and shown a little bit of resistance. So currently, strategy stock price is at $399.80, which if you've been following the channel, we've been mentioning this is a very, very key level. It's not only that $400 to $402 level, it's some strong support for strategy. It's also a psychological level, as when stock gets to these $200 level, $300 level, these key core fundamental psychological levels, it does show even more of a bounce effect or resistance effect, depending on where that resistance marker or support marker is. So with that being said, on the weekly time frame, we're definitely still working bullish, guys. Anything above these midline 50% retracement is nice. You do have to think that at that point, all the data we have on a weekly perspective, this is merely just a pullback, a little blip amongst the road to continue to rise higher. We started to, collapse from these 373 and give it a 50% retracement down within this zone. It's a little bit different, but as of now, we're still very much in the midst of this big run up, pretty much at the top. And it's been pretty steady, guys. I do have to say, even though it's been, quite linear, it's a little bit contradictory, as we mentioned in the beginning of the video, but, it has been pretty steady. Jump over the daily real quick, grind up, a nice pullback, hammer candle, flag out a little bit. So there's been some pretty nice pauses. It hasn't been quite just a ridiculous boom all the way up like this. Get ready because it's going to dump. That's how stock goes, guys. If it gets too much out of this, for all those Bollinger Band traders, the divergence, mean divergence, all that. Once it gets too out of line, it has to pull back in a sense, just to kind of balance out yin and yang. So as of now, we are seeing that slight pullback on the weekly, but we'll have to jump to the daily, as we don't get a whole lot of signs from this weekly time frame. We're just starting to see a little bit of a retracement on the daily time frame. We do see this ascending support, which we've been keeping a close eye on over the last few weeks, has broken. We're in this very nice channel, which has pretty much been an escalator from the stock. We've come down over the last 3-4 weeks and really perfectly bounce off that 2-3 weeks. Sorry, perfectly bounced off that marker a couple of times. And so we have officially broken that ascending rough level, moving up, which has been a pretty nice base for the stock. So as far as a short-term momentum, it's not the best sign you want to see, guys, but it is a little bit in the air, as there is a lot of times where stocks do come off their ascending uptrend, especially a strong stock like this, guys. Right, we're on the weekly time frame, we're breaking out. The stock looks very good. So to break this ascending support on the daily, it is a little bit in the air. Whether stock will stabilize, kind of just consolidate and jumble around, gain its feet again before we go on higher, or if maybe we do see a little bit of a pullback, from this ascending support being broken on the daily time frame. There isn't enough clues, I would say, to decisively make that decision. But based off of implied probability, there is a decent chance we do have a little bit of a pullback from this level. But I think a lot of it does depend, guys, whether we can really hold that $400 level strong. As when we look on the daily time frame, the clues we do have, as strategy hasn't been hanging around this $400, $500 level, guys. At that point, we've only hung over that $400 level for maybe 1 month. 1 month of price action, right? Same with $300, $400. There's only been so many levels at this area. And we do the super, super important level, which we will be watching moving forward, that $400 level. So prior to this very key run up, we did come down to this $400 level for bouncing once, 2, and 3 times, failing, pushing back down. As we push down, we pop back up and reject once, twice, 3, 4, and then we reclaim that level, immediately flushing right through it, not being able to hold before pushing against it once, twice, and a couple more times, guys. We fell back, we came back to that level about 3 weeks later and topped out twice before falling. So MicroStrategy has been very key to do this over the last few months and or years. It's picked a spot and it's been very, very stubborn over that level. Even right here, we see this descending or pennant, whatever you want to call it, right? This pennant formation. It shows this very, very hard level around that 315 zone. And we based at this level, this key level right here, guys. We flushed below it, right? And then we came back at the end of this bull flag. We pressed up against that same exact level for about 4 or 5 days before taking off. The next key level we're watching is not 315 anymore, 320. Now it's 400 to 402. There's some buyers at these 390 levels, but that general area, guys, as far as a daily perspective, how do we handle that from a daily, will be key, right? I do think that will gauge the short-term momentum. Really, whether we can hold that 400, because not only is it a key level, that $400 level, it lines up perfectly with the psychological level, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, these major levels, $50, $100, $150. These major market points are definitely a spot where long-term buyers and sellers look at and have their binoculars to really see where price reacts around this level. And historically, we've gotten a lot of touch points. Even within the last 7 days, guys, when you look at the last 7 days, 8, 9 days of price action, we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, essentially 9 candles hanging around the zone. About 80% of the last 10 days of price action have been directly either rejecting off that level or bouncing. And right now we're sitting right in the middle, as if we pull up the resistance and support. You see this doji candle is perfectly printed right on that $400 level. So I really do think that'll be key, guys. If we do break that $400 level, the next area where buyers have been stepping up a little bit is at 389, 390 zone. But then after that, we will be looking at these 381 and 373.50. With that being said, guys, as far as the daily perspective, there's not too much we could take out of this. We're definitely seeing that we're breaking this uptrend. We're bouncing on this very, very critical level, which has been key in the past. So we're seeing a lot of major data points that can give us what we need to look for moving forward. But as far as implied probability, it's a little in the air where it can go. So this is a good time to shift over to the hourly perspective so we can get a bit of a more micro, in-depth, close range analysis. Alrighty, guys, on the hourly time frame, we are seeing this ascending support on a more extended level, as each one of these candles, of course, represents 1 hour. So there's a lot more price points to work with here. And you clearly see, man, this has been a very, very big killer over the last couple of weeks. It's perfectly held up to this spot We mentioned in the last video, pressing up against that resistance point right here at 422.25, that if we don't close over this level, there's a good chance we come down to this ascending support, which we ended up doing, holding for a couple hours before flushing below. When you see that 422.25 level, guys, if we do end up holding this $400 to $402 support level, at that point, we will be in this kind of range. Once again, the support is so padded, and we mentioned this in the last couple of videos. Once we got over it, we're pretty much in this range between 422.25 and 400. And that's exactly what we've been doing. We've been consolidating right in this support. And now, of course, we are showing a little bit more weakness as we broke this ascending support. And now we're really, dangling below this level, kind of testing it out, potentially trying to break that and reach and go to the next support levels beneath. But we're seeing a very, very similar projection, a lot of back and forth energy, right? You see over here, we're pressing up against that resistance. We get over it. Looks like we're breaking out before actually closing on the hourly beneath it. We have this inverted hammer candle. Same with over here, guys. It looks like a very nice breakout. We actually ended up running all the way to 430 before the hourly closed beneath it. We bounced around. We had this big candle pushing up right to that level and wicking out right at that exact level. Okay, there's a little bit of this descending resistance. Got a little bit of momentum from that break before really being short-lived and ended up crushing beneath it. And then from that point, we got a hammer candle. So another fake breakdown, right? Fake breakout, fake breakout, fake breakout, fake breakdown, fake breakdown. So it's a lot of back and forth energy in some key zones. It's a little bit nuanced as we're seeing these, these tests. But the main thing, which is super simple in this area, which we'll be continuing to watch, is as long as we're in this $400 to $402 support zone, we will be effectively in a range, which is not a bad thing at all for strategy. As we mentioned on the daily, right? We're working with this more of a sustained move up rather than this chaotic just rise all the way up. So to have a stock in our range after a nice move up is definitely a good sign, but we're seeing a lot of indecision, guys, centering back to the daily candle, right? Indecision. We were definitely pressed up against these highs, looking like we might be able to get over it, but no closes quite over this level right here. So that's really been the indication, guys. We've had no hourly close, no daily close over this resistance level. So now we're really flirting with this support level, which has been pretty key in the past. As you see, we did a double top of this area. And of course, going back to the daily months from now, that was the line in the sand, guys. So as far as strategy, man, I wish I could give you guys a little bit more, but we got to keep it blunt. The motto in the channel is technical analysis without BS. Sometimes there's only so much data we can look at, and the implied probability is a little bit more flipped. And I think that's a good perspective to put strategy in moving forward in the next few days. There is a pretty good chance we do hold this zone, but to play devil's advocate, there is a pretty good chance as well that we actually sink beneath this, we see what happens. And from that perspective, we'll be able to track that, with these levels, and we'll have more to give. But as of now, man, we're really playing tug of war, between these two major levels, showing a little bit more weakness to the downside as we broke this ascending support. But that's not a give all be all. So as of now, guys, next time we see some movement in this support zone, we will cover that. We cover strategy a couple times a week. But as of now, in this more awkward situation, there's a whole lot of indecision. So we'll be keeping an eye on that $400 to $402 support level still, and that $422.25. We mentioned this the last few weeks. We've gotten these nasty fake breakouts. So with that being said, man, if the $400 level does not hold, keep an eye on that 389. That's been a pretty key spot. We've seen a lot of wicks in these areas and buyers that step up. Then after that, we'll be looking at 381. Okay, guys, so I'm going to jump over to Bitcoin. Bitcoin will have a very big correlation to do with strategy. And you see right away on the daily time frame, a very similar situation, guys. We're breaking out of this weekly bull flag. We're pressing up into these resistance points, and we have a lot of wicks up against it. If you followed the video about a week ago, you see when we got to these highs over here, we mentioned now this is an incredible move, but it's not going to last. We're going to expect some pullback. For about a week, we said and there's been about 1 week of candles pressing around the zone. And we did predict that we do break through these highs and form new all-time highs. I still do think we do that, guys, but admittingly, once again, we're back in a range, guys. We're in a very, very key range. If we pull up these support zones, you see over here with this very nice breakout, pushing up this monstrous run. You know, we flagged out at the zone, we broke out, we're pressing up against these highs, breakout. Once again, pressing up against these highs for about 5-6 hours for boom, breaking out, forming this channel up, aggressively falling and bouncing right at this level once and twice, bouncing on this ascending support, which really isn't all that relevant, right? We see it on the daily, but we'll go and delete that as this market point isn't too relevant as of now. And we bounced at this level once, two, three, 4 times. And then we came back to that level and showed some very, very big wicks around that level. So there's a whole lot of support around that $101 to $500,000 level. The exact level I've marked up is 101,459. Keep an eye on that, guys. That's the range, man. Once again, we're in this range. There's a lot of similarities between the two charts, right? We're in this general range. It's really going to depict the next short-term momentum. As far as a macro perspective, a long-term, Bitcoin is bullish, guys. It's setting these higher lows. We're moving up very strong. Similar with strategy, right? We're moving up very, very strong. But, you know, the elephant in the room, we're in this range, guys. So let's pull that up. We're in this range. So a little bit more of a boring analysis today, guys, but we will keep it cut, clear, and dry. Stick to the fundamentals. That's what got us to the dance. So with that being said, guys, if you found any value out of the video, like, subscribe, all that. We'll be following strategy about 3-4 times a week. Hope you have a good day. Take care and goodbye.